Hello friends and welcome back to Broken BJJ. My name is Kenny and today I want to talk to you about how often you should be training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. This is one of those questions that I think most people ask when they first start. Often that'll be with a focus on the future, kind of a how long will it take me to get my black belt? How long will it take me to get my blue belt? For people who are a bit more realistic. And there's also a question of what's an appropriate level, what's a normal level of training, and of course that varies enormously because there are people who train jiu-jitsu for all sorts of different reasons, in all sorts of different ways, and at different intensities at different times in their lives. Some people obviously will train very intensively when they are preparing to compete, but at other times they might dial it back and only be on a kind of maintenance mode of training where they're just sort of keeping their hand in. I think there's also a lot of advice out there. Certainly here on YouTube I found several videos before I started training talking about how much training people should take on. And I think some of those videos are not very helpful. I saw one recently by another white belt that suggested that if you weren't training 5 days a week, then there was basically no point in you training at all. And that to me was maybe the worst piece of advice it's possible to give somebody when they're just thinking about starting jiu-jitsu, especially if that person has some sort of disability, some sort of limitation. And that doesn't have to just be a physical thing. People who have work commitments, people who have family commitments can't commit the same amount of time to jiu-jitsu that people who are younger, fitter, healthier, maybe have fewer responsibilities than they can afford. So what I would say is if you're 20 years old in peak physical condition, you have no other responsibilities and you can afford to train 5 or 6 days a week, then that's brilliant. I mean, that's really great and you should totally go for that. But if you're like me, you're in your 40s, you're carrying some injuries or you have some disability, you have some other responsibilities at home, then don't feel bad about the fact that you can't train 5 days a week. Don't even feel bad about the fact that you can't train 3 days a week. The fact is, if you're doing one jiu-jitsu class every week, you are still doing far, far more jiu-jitsu than 99.9% of the population. Even probably the majority of people who start doing jiu-jitsu don't keep up 1 day a week for very long. Because as we know, a huge number of people who take up jiu-jitsu later drop out. And I think part of that might have something to do with that feeling that they're not able to commit enough time. You know, it's very common to say, oh, you need to be training 2 or 3 times a week or you're really not going to make any progress. That isn't true. Progress certainly is faster the more you train. But it's still possible to learn with just one class a week. And my take on it is that if you are only able to certainly commit to 1 day a week, it's far better that you commit to that 1 day a week and do it consistently than that you push yourself to do 2 days a week, 3 days a week that you really can't afford to do and end up running yourself ragged, spreading yourself too thin, getting exhausted, getting frustrated, just getting what we say in Scotland, scunnered by the whole process, and you then give up. It's always better in almost anything to under-promise and over-deliver than the other way around. And I think if you can commit to that 1 day a week, there is every chance that as your fitness develops, as you get more involved in the life of your gym, as you develop friendships in the gym, as you get better, you will feel an urge to try to do more. Now, obviously, if you have a severe disability and you really can't manage the recovery to do 2 days a week, that your body needs a whole week to recover from one session, then obviously don't push any further. But for people who are maybe more like me, who are limited but not necessarily really stopped from doing most things, and where fitness had been a big part of what was holding me back at first, then you will find that after a while, 1 day a week doesn't seem like enough. I now train 3 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week. I don't think I could do 4 days a week regularly right now, but it does make a difference when I'm able to do it. Now, I will say, you probably want to train as much as you can. It does make a difference. 2 weeks ago, we had 4 sessions in a week at my gym. Our coach threw in an extra session that week, just because the weather was nice, and here in Scotland we're still training outside for now. So that was a challenge for me to push myself to do those 4 sessions in a week. But it did make a big difference to my ability with the techniques that we were learning that week. Last week I missed a session. I had a hypo, I slept in, I couldn't make it to this class on Saturday, and I noticed that my technique for last week was not as good. But again, that doesn't mean that less training automatically means that I wasn't making any progress. I still learned how to do some stuff. I just didn't have as much time to polish it as I did when I had 4 sessions in the week. So yeah, it's very possible that if you are only able to train 1 day a week, you won't even quite be going at half the speed of somebody who is training 2 times a week, or a third of the speed of somebody going 3 times a week. But you will make progress. It'll be slow and it'll be difficult, but virtually everything in Jiu-Jitsu is fairly slow and fairly difficult. There is one other thing that I think we probably need to think about in all of this, and that is that in some schools, certain disabilities will prevent you from ever reaching a blue belt. And that can be quite challenging for some people. I think a lot of people find that prospect quite demoralizing. There's almost an expectation that you're entitled to that belt advancement if you put in the hours. And of course, you're not. There is a level of skill that you have to reach. Now, in most gyms, most coaches will still promote people, even if there are aspects of the game that they cannot do. Because there are so many techniques in Jiu-Jitsu, there's so much out there, that there is almost always an alternative strategy for anything that you find you can't do because your body puts a hard limit on something. But what I realized quite early on in my Jiu-Jitsu training was that I'm not really concerned about getting a blue belt. I'm certainly not thinking about a black belt right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, a blue belt would be nice. It would feel good. It would feel like I had achieved something. But it's not the most important thing to me. What I get out of Jiu-Jitsu is something physical. It's one of the few types of exercise I've ever been able to do where I didn't feel an unreasonable strain on the joints that are not in great condition. It's also a tremendous intellectual exercise. There's so much to learn, so much to think about in Jiu-Jitsu, that I always feel like I've got more to think about, more to learn, that my brain is engaged in a way that it's not really if I'm just running or swimming or, you know, one of those kinds of activities. And so I kind of came to terms with this idea that I might end up as a 70-year-old white belt. I would be by far the most experienced white belt in the room. And there would probably, in that situation, be aspects of my game that were at black belt level, just through sheer years of hard work and repetition. And I'm okay with that. I really think that I would be okay with that. I think there would be something kind of fun about being the oldest white belt in the room, and then giving new people a fright when they realize that I'm not just a white belt, that there's a little bit more to it than that. So my take on this is that focusing on how much you should be training and demanding that you train 4 or 5 times a week is really focusing on the wrong things. It's focusing on the idea that you need to make progress, that you need to be moving forward as fast as you can at all times. And that simply isn't true. And for people who have disabilities, it's not possible. So we need to think about setting different kinds of goals. And so for me, the thing is, can I make it to training? Can I get better today? Can I learn something new today? And that, I think, is a much healthier attitude to the whole process. I'm not thinking about, you know, where I'm going to be a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. I'm thinking, can I get to training this week? Can I get to training today? And the fact that I can demonstrates to me that I'm already doing more. I'm already, in a lot of ways, a better jiu-jitsu student than the majority of people who ever try a class, because the majority of them don't stick it out. 1 class a week is not a lot. You won't make fast progress, but you will make progress. And that's why I think the minimum anyone should train is the minimum. If you are asking how much do I need to train to get good at jiu-jitsu, the answer is as much as you can. And if what you can do isn't much, then that's fine. You can still get better. You will just do it a bit more slowly. And if you're like me, if you have disabilities that slow you down already, then you've probably kind of got used to the fact that going a little bit more slowly is just how you get there. And of course, don't forget the story of the tortoise and the hare. The one burned himself out going too fast too soon. The other just kept plodding and made it to the end of their track before the hare. So I think the journey with jiu-jitsu can be the same thing. It's easy to throw yourself in, do 5 days a week, and then end up injuring yourself and having to miss months at a time. Or just tiring yourself out, getting yourself to a point where you feel like anything less than 5 days isn't really worth it. And so when your work routine changes or your family responsibilities change and you can only do 2 or 3 nights a week, then you become demoralized and you quit. When that's the biggest mistake you can make. Like I say, if you can commit to that 1 day a week and you can keep doing it regularly, month after month, year after year, you'll get better than somebody who does 5 days a week for a year and then quits. you'll end up by far the better jiu-jitsu player. And the ultimate goal, as I say, is to get better. You can only do that if you're in training, and if you're in training consistently. So don't push yourself too hard. Give yourself the breaks you need, and make sure that your career is as long, as productive, and as healthy as you. So that is all I've got for you this week. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've got any thoughts on all of this, if you want to talk about how often you train, how you got started, how you either built up to training the amount you do now, or why you had to cut down to train the way you do now, let us know down in the comments. I'm really interested to hear all about it. Please also like the video if you have enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel, which helps us grow. And please share it around with your friends, your training partners. We'd love to hear from them. But that is absolutely all we've got for you this week. So thanks again for watching. Enjoy training, and I'll see you next week.